The vast emptiness of space stretched before Captain Marathane as she stood on the bridge of the HLV Vanguard, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the distant stars of the Eldar system. The year was 2487 deep into the era of interstellar exploration, and humanity had spread across dozens of star systems forming the Galactic Alliance. But now, a shadow loomed on the horizon. Captain long-range scanners have detected unusual energy signatures at the edge of the Luxuria system. Lieutenant Jesse Corrin reported, his voice steady, despite the tension evident in his posture. Mara nodded, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, revealing a face marked by determination and the weight of command. "Show me." The holographic display shifted, zooming in on a cluster of massive ships, their designs unlike anything in the Alliance database. They moved with precision, an armada of destruction, heading directly toward Luxuria III, a recently colonized planet with a population of just over 3 million. Solonian vessels, Mara muttered, her expression hardening. The Solonian Empire had conquered 75 star systems over the past 4 centuries, their massive dreadnoughts and collective intelligence making them nearly unstoppable. Until now, they had shown little interest in Alliance territory, focusing their expansion in the opposite direction of the galaxy. "They've changed course," Mara observed aloud. Chief Engineer Lena Voris approached, her hands clasped behind her back. "Captain, based on their current trajectory and speed, they'll reach Luxuria III in less than 72 hours. The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew what happened to planets that fell under Solonian control. Absolute subjugation with any resistance met by overwhelming force. They didn't just conquer worlds, they absorbed them into their collective. "Send an emergency transmission to Alliance headquarters," Mara ordered. "Inform them of a potential Solonian invasion of Luxuria III. Then plot an intercept course." The navigation officer turned in his chair, surprise evident on his face. "Captain, with all due respect, the Vanguard is a scout vessel. We're outgunned and outnumbered." Mara's gaze remained fixed on the approaching armada. "We're also the only Alliance ship within range. Those colonists won't stand a chance without warning and evacuation. Our mission is to buy them time." The officer nodded and turned back to his console. "Setting intercept course, ETA 4 hours." As the Vanguard accelerated toward its destination, Mara retreated to her quarters, reviewing everything the Alliance knew about the Solonian Empire. Which wasn't much. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's. Their ships powered by energy sources scientists could only theorize about. But most concerning was their collective consciousness, a hive mind that connected all Solonian vessels, allowing them to act with perfect coordination. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. "Captain, we've received a response from Alliance headquarters." Lieutenant Corrin's voice came through the comm. "I'll take it here," Mara replied, activating her terminal. Admiral Helena Chen's face appeared on the screen, her expression grave. "Captain Thane, your report has been received and verified. We've dispatched the 7th Fleet, but they won't reach Luxuria III for at least 4 days. Mara felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "The colonists don't have 4 days, Admiral." "I'm aware, Captain. Your orders are to delay the Solonian advance by any means necessary, without sacrificing your vessel. Evacuation shuttles are already en route to Luxuria III, but they'll need time to complete their mission." "Understood, Admiral. We'll do what we can." As the transmission ended, Mara stared at the blank screen, contemplating the impossible task ahead. The Vanguard was a scout ship with limited weaponry and defensive capabilities. Going head-to-head against a Solonian dreadnought would be suicide. "Then we don't go head-to-head," she murmured to herself, an idea beginning to form. Back on the bridge, Mara gathered her senior officers. "We can't outgun them, but we might be able to outsmart them. Lieutenant Corrin, what do we know about Solonian sensor capabilities?" Corrin pulled up the relevant data. "They use a quantum entangled detection system. Incredibly accurate, but potentially vulnerable to certain types of interference." "What kind of interference?" "Theoretical at this point, Captain, But our research suggests that targeted electromagnetic pulses could disrupt their sensor network temporarily. Mara nodded thoughtfully. Chief Voris, could we modify our deflector shields to generate such pulses? The engineer considered for a moment. It would require rerouting power from non-essential systems, and we'd be vulnerable while doing so, but yes, it's possible. Make it happen, Mara ordered. We need every advantage we can get. As the Vanguard continued its approach, a transmission cut through their communications channel. The holographic projector in the center of the bridge activated, revealing a tall, imposing figure with silver-blue skin and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner light. Alliance vessel. The figure spoke, its voice resonating with a strange harmonic quality that suggested multiple voices speaking as one. This is Admiral Solon Kai of the Solonian Empire. You have crossed into territory claimed by the Collective. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Mara stepped forward, her back straight, her voice firm. Admiral Kai, I am Captain Mara Thane of the Alliance vessel Vanguard. The system you are approaching is recognized sovereign territory of the Galactic Alliance. It is you who must withdraw. A flicker of something, perhaps surprise, crossed the Admiral's face before it settled back into impassive authority. Your primitive understanding of galactic politics is noted, Captain Thane. The Solonian Empire claims all systems within the Eldar Quadrant. Luxuria III will be assimilated. Any resistance will be met with appropriate force. The 3 million colonists on Luxuria III might have something to say about that, Mara countered. Their opinions are irrelevant. Their future is already determined, as is yours if you continue on your current course. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. They've increased speed, Corrin reported, and deployed scout vessels in our direction. Mara's mind raced through their options. Adjust course. Take us through the asteroid belt. Their larger ships won't be able to follow as easily. The Vanguard banked sharply, heading toward the dense field of space debris that encircled the Luxuria system. As they navigated through the asteroids, Mara watched the sensor displays, showing the Solonian scouts in pursuit. Chief Voris, status on those electromagnetic pulses. Ready to deploy on your command, Captain, but we'll only get one shot before they adapt. Mara nodded. Wait until the lead scout is within optimal range. The minutes stretched like hours as the Vanguard weaved through the asteroid belt, the pursuing Solonian vessels closing the distance with alarming speed. Now, Mara commanded, as the lead scout entered the designated zone. The Vanguard shuddered as energy surged through its modified deflector shields, releasing a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse. The effect was immediate. The Solonian scout vessels faltered, their perfect formation breaking as their sensors temporarily failed. Direct hit on the lead scout, Corrin reported with barely contained excitement. Their navigation systems are offline. Target the second scout, Mara ordered. Standard weapons full spread. The Vanguard's phase cannons fired, striking the disoriented Solonian vessel. For a moment, it seemed like the shots had no effect. Then, secondary explosions bloomed along the scout's hull. They're retreating, Corrin announced, as the damaged Solonian vessels pulled back, returning to the safety of their fleet. A small victory, but Mara knew it would be short-lived. They'll adapt their shields to counter our pulses. We need a new strategy. Captain, Communications Officer Tasha Reed interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from Luxuria III. The evacuation has begun, but they're estimating at least 48 hours to complete. 2 days. They needed to hold off an entire Solonian fleet for 2 days. Send a message to any Alliance vessels in the neighboring systems, Mara instructed. We need reinforcements, anything they can spare. As the message was sent, Mara studied the tactical display. The main Solonian fleet had altered its course slightly, but was still heading toward Luxuria III. And now, a larger vessel had detached from the formation, moving to intercept the Vanguard. They're sending a dreadnought, Corrin observed, his voice tight. Mara's expression remained calm despite the dire implications. They consider us a threat. Good. That means we have their attention. Captain, receiving response from Alliance vessels in the Proxima system, Reed reported. HMS Resolve and USS Arcadon are en route to our position. ETA 12 hours. It was something at least. 2 more ships against a fleet, but better than facing them alone. Set course for the gas giant Nebulon, Mara ordered. We'll use its atmosphere to mask our signature and wait for reinforcements. The Vanguard accelerated away from the asteroid belt, heading toward the massive gas planet that dominated this region of the system. Behind them, the Solonian dreadnought adjusted its course in pursuit. They're gaining on us, Navigation Officer Keller warned. Divert power from non-essential systems to engines, Mara commanded. And prepare to deploy emergency countermeasures on my mark. As the Vanguard raced toward Nebulon, the distance between it and the pursuing dreadnought steadily decreased. The massive Solonian vessel was now close enough that they could make out details of its design, an elongated, almost organic shape with pulsing energy conduits running along its hull. Countermeasures ready, Captain. Tactical Officer Rodriguez confirmed. Deploy in 3-2-1, Mark. The Vanguard released a cloud of specialized particles designed to interfere with sensor readings, while simultaneously launching a series of decoy probes, programmed to mimic the ship's signature. Entering Nebulon's upper atmosphere, Keller announced as the Vanguard plunged into the swirling gases of the giant planet. The ship shuddered as it encountered turbulence, its shields straining against the pressure and radiation. But the maneuver had worked. The Solonian dreadnought had slowed its pursuit clearly, unwilling to follow them into the hazardous atmosphere. They're maintaining position at the edge of the atmosphere, Corrin reported. Launching probe vessels. Mara had expected as much. Take us deeper into the electromagnetic storm layer. Their probes won't be able to function there. As the Vanguard descended further into Nebulon's atmosphere, the bridge displays flickered with interference. The storm layer was notorious for disrupting electronic systems, but Chief Voris had prepared for this, installing specialized shielding around the ship's critical components. Storm layer in 30 seconds, Keller warned. Brace for turbulence. The ship bucked violently as it entered the electromagnetically charged region of the gas giant. Outside, the viewport's brilliant flashes of energy illuminated the swirling gases in a spectacular display of nature's power. Shields holding at 68%, Rodriguez reported. But we can't stay here indefinitely. We don't need indefinitely, Mara replied. Just long enough for our reinforcements to arrive and the evacuation to progress. She turned to Corrin. Can we communicate with Alliance headquarters through this interference? Negative, Captain. All long-range communications are blocked. Mara frowned. Without the ability to coordinate with the evacuation efforts or their incoming reinforcements, they were essentially flying blind. Captain. Chief Voris approached her, expression thoughtful. I might have a solution for our communication problem. If we reconfigure one of our probes with a quantum entanglement transmitter, we could launch it above the storm layer to relay messages. Do it, Mara ordered. And while you're at it, see if you can improve our sensor capabilities. I want to know what that dreadnought is doing. As Voris set to work, Mara gathered her senior officers in the conference room adjacent to the bridge. The ship continued to shake periodically as it navigated the turbulent atmosphere. We've bought some time, but we need a plan for when we leave this sanctuary, Mara began. Ideas. We could try to outrun them, Rodriguez suggested. The Vanguard is faster than their dreadnought in open space. But not faster than their scout vessels, Corrin countered. They'd overtake us before we could reach the evacuation fleet. What about using Nebulon itself as a weapon, Lieutenant Commander Saito, the science officer proposed. The electromagnetic storms could be artificially intensified to create a massive discharge, like a lightning bolt on a planetary scale. Mara considered this. Could we direct such a discharge at the dreadnought? Theoretically, yes, Saito nodded. But it would require perfect timing and positioning, and we'd be at risk ourselves. It's risky, but it might be our best option, Mara decided. Work with Chief Voris to develop a method to trigger and direct the discharge. As the meeting concluded, Reed entered the conference room. Captain Chief Voris has deployed the communication probe. We're receiving a transmission from the HMS Resolve. Mara hurried back to the bridge where the flickering image of Captain Marcus Jensen of the Resolve appeared on the main screen. Captain Thane. Jensen greeted, his image distorted by interference. We've received your distress call and are approaching the Luxuria system with the Arcadon. What's your situation? Mara quickly briefed him on their encounter with the Solonian fleet and their current position within Nebulan's atmosphere. The evacuation of Luxuria III is proceeding but slowly, Jensen informed her. Alliance headquarters has authorized us to engage the Solonian fleet, if necessary, to protect the evacuation transports. 3 ships against a fleet isn't exactly favorable odds, Mara noted grimly. 4 ships, Jensen corrected. The INS Galileo was already in the system conducting research. They've joined the evacuation effort and are prepared to provide support. It was still a desperate situation, but slightly less so. We're developing a plan to disable or delay the dreadnought that's currently hunting us. Once we execute, we'll rendezvous with your vessels at these coordinates. Mara transmitted the data through the quantum link. Understood. We'll be in position in approximately 10 hours. Jensen out. As the transmission ended, Mara turned to find Saito and Voris approaching with determined expressions. We've developed a method to trigger the electromagnetic discharge, Saito reported. By releasing a specially calibrated plasma stream into the storm layer, we can create a chain reaction that will culminate in a massive energy surge. And I've modified our deflector shields to channel and direct that surge, Voris added. But there's a catch. We'll need to be relatively close to the dreadnought when we trigger the reaction. How close? Mara asked. Within 5,000 kilometers, Voris replied. And our shields will be at minimum strength while channeling the discharge. Mara considered the risks. If this works, what kind of damage can we expect to inflict on the dreadnought? Their energy systems should be temporarily disabled, Saito explained. Possibly their propulsion as well. It won't destroy them, but it should buy us enough time to escape and rendezvous with our reinforcements. And if it doesn't work, then we'll be defenseless in front of a fully functional Solonian dreadnought, Voris stated bluntly. Mara nodded, appreciating the honesty. Prepare the plasma stream and make the necessary modifications to our shields. We'll execute the plan in 8 hours. That should give our reinforcements time to get into position if things go wrong. As her officers set to work, Mara retreated to her ready room to review the latest intelligence on the Solonian Empire. There had to be something. They were missing some weakness they could exploit beyond this desperate gambit. Hours passed as the Vanguard maintained its position within Nebulan's storm layer, the ship's systems constantly adjusting to counteract the turbulence and electromagnetic interference. Periodic reports from the communication probe confirmed that the Solonian dreadnought remained in position at the edge of the atmosphere, waiting patiently for its prey to emerge. Captain Corin's voice came through the comm. We're receiving a transmission from Luxuria III. 30% of the colonists have been evacuated, but they're encountering technical difficulties with some of the transport vessels. The news wasn't encouraging. At that rate, they would need far more than 48 hours to complete the evacuation. Acknowledged, Mara responded. Inform them we're doing everything possible to delay the Solonian advance. As she ended the communication, a thought occurred to her. The Solonians operated with a collective consciousness, their actions coordinated through a complex network that connected all their vessels. What if they could disrupt that network? Mara hurried back to the bridge. Lieutenant Corin, what do we know about the Solonian communication system, the one that links their hive mind? Corin pulled up the relevant data. Very little, Captain. Our scientists theorize it operates on principles similar to quantum entanglement, but far more advanced. Could our electromagnetic pulse affect it? Possibly, but we'd need to be much closer than we were with the scout vessels, and as we saw, they adapt quickly. Mara turned to Chief Voris. What if we combine our pulse technology with the electromagnetic discharge from Nebulan? Could we create a disruption large enough to affect their entire fleet? Voris considered this, her eyes widening slightly as she processed the implications. It's Not impossible. We'd need to modulate the frequency of the discharge precisely, and the timing would be critical. But theoretically, it could work. Make it happen, Mara ordered. This could be our chance to do more than just delay them. We might be able to throw their entire fleet into disarray. As Voris and her team worked on the new plan, Mara studied the tactical displays showing the position of the Solonian fleet. Most of their vessels had continued toward Luxuria III, but a small detachment had remained with the Dreadnought, apparently tasked with eliminating the Vanguard before rejoining the main assault. Captain, Saito called from the science station. I've been analyzing the composition of Nebulon's atmosphere, and I've discovered something interesting. There's a highly concentrated pocket of element, 255, approximately 200 kilometers below our current position. Element 255, Mara questioned. The synthetic compound? Yes, Captain. It appears to occur naturally in Nebulon's environment, possibly formed by the interaction of the electromagnetic storms with the planet's unique atmospheric chemistry. Mara knew that element 255 was highly reactive and had been used in experimental shield technology. Could we harvest some of it? Potentially, Saito nodded. If we modified one of our probes, we could collect a sample. It might be useful for enhancing our electromagnetic pulse. Do it, Mara agreed. Every advantage helps. The hours ticked by as preparations continued. The modified probe successfully collected a sample of element 255, which Voris and her team integrated into their pulse emitter. Meanwhile, Saito refined the calculations for triggering the atmospheric discharge. All modifications complete, Captain, Voris reported finally. The pulse emitter has been enhanced with element 255, and the deflector shields are calibrated to channel the electromagnetic discharge. The plasma stream is ready for deployment, Saito added. We've calculated the optimal position for triggering the reaction. Mara nodded, feeling a mixture of tension and determination. Status of the Solonian Dreadnought. Still maintaining position at the edge of the atmosphere, Corin replied. They've deployed a perimeter of scout vessels presumably to intercept us, if we attempt to flee. And our reinforcements. HMS Resolve and USS Arcadon will be in position in just under 2 hours. The INS Galileo is coordinating with the evacuation fleet near Luxuria III. Mara made her decision. We're not waiting. The longer we delay, the more time the main Solonian fleet has to reach the evacuation transports. She addressed the bridge crew. Battle stations. Prepare to ascend to the calculated position for the plasma deployment. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, securing stations and activating combat protocols. The Vanguard's engines hummed with increased power as it began its careful ascent through the turbulent atmosphere. Approaching optimal position, Keller announced. 300 kilometers to go. The Dreadnought has detected our movement, Corin warned. They're adjusting their position to intercept us once we clear the atmosphere. Scout vessels are taking up attack formation, Rodriguez added. Mara remained calm, her focus absolute. Maintain course. Prepare to deploy the plasma stream on my mark. The Vanguard continued its ascent, the turbulence gradually decreasing as they approached the upper layers of Nebulon's atmosphere. Optimal position reached, Saito confirmed. Plasma stream ready for deployment. Deploy, Mara ordered. The ship shuddered slightly as the specialized plasma was released into the storm layer below them. On the main viewer, they watched as the glowing stream dispersed, interacting with the electromagnetic fields that permeated the atmosphere. Plasma stream is creating the expected reaction, Saito reported, monitoring the sensors. Energy levels are rising exponentially. Discharge imminent in 45 seconds. Take us up full thrust, Mara commanded. Set course directly toward the Dreadnought. The Vanguard burst from Nebulon's atmosphere, accelerating rapidly toward the waiting Solonian vessel. The massive Dreadnought loomed before them, its weapon systems visibly charging. They're locking weapons, Rodriguez warned. Evasive pattern Delta, Mara countered. Keep us within 5,000 kilometers of their position. The Vanguard executed a series of tight maneuvers, avoiding the initial barrage from the Dreadnought, while maintaining the critical distance. Discharge in 15 seconds. Cyto counted down. Energy surge building beyond expected parameters. The element 255 is amplifying the reaction. Shields to maximum, Mara ordered. Reroute all available power to the deflector array. Solonian scout vessels moving to intercept, Corrin reported. Ignore them, Mara instructed. Focus on the dreadnought. All weapons target their primary energy conduits, but hold fire. Discharge in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The space behind the Vanguard suddenly illuminated as a massive surge of electromagnetic energy erupted from Nebulon's atmosphere. The ship shuddered violently as its modified shields caught the discharge, channeling it into a focused beam directed at the Solonian dreadnought. At the same instant, Vorus activated the enhanced pulse emitter, sending a precisely modulated burst of energy, riding the electromagnetic wave. The combined effect was spectacular. The beam struck the dreadnought's shields, which flared brilliantly before collapsing under the onslaught. The pulse penetrated the vessel's defenses, targeting the very frequency that the Solonians used for their collective communication. The effect was immediate. The previously coordinated scout vessels suddenly broke formation, their movements becoming erratic. The dreadnought itself seemed to falter, its weapons fire ceasing as systems went offline. Direct hit, Rodriguez confirmed, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. Their shields are down and their weapon systems appear to be offline. The pulse disrupted their network, Corrin added, scanning the readings. It appears their entire command structure has been temporarily severed from the collective. Mara allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction before focusing on their next move. Status of our shields and weapons. Shields at 30% and recovering, Vorus reported. The discharge drained more power than anticipated, but systems are stabilizing. Weapons fully operational, Rodriguez confirmed. Target the dreadnought's propulsion systems, Mara ordered. Fire when ready. The Vanguard's phase cannons released a coordinated barrage, striking the vulnerable dreadnought at precisely calculated points. Secondary explosions bloomed along the massive ship's hull as critical systems failed. Their propulsion is offline, Rodriguez reported. They're adrift. The scout vessels are retreating, Corrin added. It appears they're falling back to the main fleet. Mara nodded, her expression grim but satisfied. Hail the dreadnought. After a moment, the main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the Solonian vessel. Unlike before, the scene was one of chaos, with multiple Solonians moving urgently between stations. Admiral Solon Kai stood at the center, his silver-blue features now showing clear signs of stress. This is Captain Mara Thane of the Alliance vessel Vanguard, Mara began. Your ship is disabled and vulnerable. The rest of your fleet is too far away to provide immediate assistance. Kai's glowing eyes narrowed. You have merely inconvenienced us, Captain. Our systems will restore themselves, and when they do, you will face the full might of the Solonian Empire. Perhaps, Mara acknowledged. But not before our reinforcements arrive, and not before the colonists of Luxuria 3 have been safely evacuated. I'm offering you a choice, Admiral. Stand down your fleet or risk losing your flagship and everyone aboard. A flicker of something, perhaps respect, crossed Kai's features. The Solonian Empire does not negotiate with primitive species. Then consider this a first, Mara countered. Your collective consciousness has been temporarily disrupted. For the first time in what I imagine is a very long time, you have the opportunity to think for yourself, rather than as part of the hive. I suggest you use that opportunity wisely. Before Kai could respond, the transmission was interrupted by Lieutenant Corrin. Captain, detecting multiple Alliance signatures entering the system. The Resolve and Arcadon have arrived along with 3 additional vessels. Mara turned in surprise. 3 additional vessels? Yes, Captain. It appears the 4th Tactical Squadron was already en route to conduct exercises in a neighboring system. They diverted when they received our distress call. A new transmission came through and Captain Jensen's face appeared on a secondary screen. Captain Thane, I see you've been keeping busy. The reinforcements are here and we've brought some friends. Mara allowed herself a small smile. Your timing is impeccable, Captain Jensen. We've disabled the Solonian dreadnought and disrupted their communication network, but the effect won't last forever. Understood. We're moving to establish a defensive perimeter around your position. The Galileo reports that the evacuation of Luxuria 3 is proceeding more rapidly now. They've resolved the technical issues with the transport vessels. Mara nodded. Excellent news. Stand by. I'm still negotiating with the Solonian commander. She turned back to the main screen where Admiral Kai's transmission had been restored. His expression had changed subtly, a calculating look replacing his previous certainty. Your reinforcements changed nothing, Kai stated though, with less conviction than before. The Solonian Empire has never been defeated. There's a first time for everything, Mara replied evenly. But today doesn't have to be that day. I'm not asking for your surrender, Admiral. I'm proposing a ceasefire, a temporary cessation of hostilities, while we establish diplomatic channels. Diplomacy is inefficient, Kai dismissed. So is losing your flagship and thousands of your people in a battle you don't need to fight, Mara countered. The Alliance has no quarrel with the Solonian Empire. We haven't encroached on your territory, and we have no desire to do so. Luxuria 3 is an Alliance world with an established colony of 3 million people. There are hundreds of uninhabited systems in this quadrant alone. Surely your expansion doesn't require this specific planet. Kai was silent for a long moment, and Mara could almost see the internal struggle playing out behind his glowing eyes. Without the collective guiding his thoughts, he was forced to make this decision alone, perhaps for the first time in his existence. The Solonian Council will not approve of negotiations, he finally stated. The Solonian Council isn't here, Mara pointed out. You are. And right now you have a choice between potentially saving the lives of everyone on your vessel or adhering to a policy that has never faced a serious challenge. Another long pause and then, what are your terms, Captain Thane? Simple. Your fleet withdraws from the Luxuria system. In return, we will provide technical assistance to repair your vessel and establish a neutral zone along the border of Alliance and Solonian space. No incursions from either side without prior diplomatic agreement. And if I refuse, then we will disable your vessel completely and escort it to Alliance space as a captured prize of war. Your crew will be treated humanely, but they will be detained until a formal peace agreement is reached with your empire. The threat was a bluff. Alliance policy prohibited the taking of prisoners, except in the most extreme circumstances. But Kai had no way of knowing that. Very well, the Solonian admiral finally conceded. I will order a temporary withdrawal of our fleet from this system, pending formal diplomatic discussions. But be warned, Captain Thane. Once our communication network is restored, the Council may override my decision. Then I suggest we work quickly, Admiral, Mara replied. I'm dispatching a medical team to assist with any casualties you may have sustained during our engagement. My chief engineer will coordinate with your technical staff to restore your basic systems. Kai inclined his head slightly, the first gesture of respect he had shown. Your tactics were unexpected, Captain. The Solonian Empire has encountered many species, but few have demonstrated such resourcefulness. Humanity has had to be resourceful to survive, Mara stated simply. We look forward to sharing that perspective with your people in a context other than battle. As the transmission ended, the bridge crew of the Vanguard exchanged looks of relief and disbelief. They had done the impossible, forced a Solonian fleet to withdraw without firing a single shot in direct combat. Captain Jensen is hailing us again, Reed reported. Put him through. Jensen's face appeared his expression a mixture of confusion and admiration. Did I just witness a Solonian dreadnought agree to negotiate? I wasn't aware that was even possible. Neither were they apparently, Mara replied with a slight smile. The disruption to their collective consciousness seems to have had some unexpected psychological effects. I suggest we take advantage of the situation while it lasts. Have your diplomatic officer prepare for initial contact protocols. Already on it, Jensen assured her. Alliance headquarters has been informed of the situation. They're dispatching a formal diplomatic team including your brother, Ambassador Rylus Thane. Mara felt a surge of relief at the mention of her brother. Rylus was one of the Alliance's most skilled negotiators, with a particular talent for establishing relations with non-human species. That's good news, she acknowledged. In the meantime, we need to establish a secure perimeter around the Solonian dreadnought and begin technical assistance. The faster we restore their basic life support and propulsion systems, the more goodwill we generate. Agreed. The Arcadon has a specialized engineering team aboard. I'll have them prepare to transfer to the dreadnought. As the communication ended, Mara turned to her senior officers. I want a full damage assessment of both our vessel and the Solonian dreadnought. Chief Voris, coordinate with the Arcadon's engineering team. Lieutenant Corin, continue monitoring the main Solonian fleet. I want to know the moment they begin their withdrawal. And if they don't withdraw, Rodriguez asked the question everyone was thinking. Mara's expression hardened. Then we demonstrate that our first victory wasn't a fluke. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. The next 12 hours were a whirlwind of activity as Alliance teams boarded the Solonian dreadnought to provide assistance. Initially met with suspicion and resistance, the human engineers gradually earned a measure of respect as they worked alongside their Solonian counterparts to restore critical systems. Mara personally led the first delegation, accompanied by Chief Voris and a security detail. The interior of the Solonian vessel was unlike anything they had ever seen. Corridors that seemed to pulse with organic energy lighting that adjusted automatically to their presence and technology, so advanced it bordered on the metaphysical. Admiral Kai met them in what appeared to be the Dreadnought's command center, a vast chamber dominated by a three-dimensional tactical display, showing the positions of all vessels in the system. Your engineers work efficiently. Kai acknowledged his tone, neutral, but no longer overtly hostile. Our primary life support systems have been restored, and internal communications are functioning again. Glad to hear it, Mara replied. Our teams report that your propulsion systems should be operational within the next few hours. However, your weapons arrays suffered more extensive damage. Those repairs will take longer. Convenient for your alliance, Kai observed dryly. Mara met his gaze evenly. We're not sabotaging your vessel, Admiral. We're prioritizing systems that ensure the survival and comfort of your crew over those designed to destroy other ships. I would think that's a reasonable approach. Kai did not respond directly, but gestured toward the tactical display. Our fleet has begun its withdrawal as agreed. They will establish a position at the edge of the Eldar system, awaiting further instructions. The Alliance appreciates your compliance, Mara stated formally. Our diplomatic vessel will arrive within 24 hours. In the meantime, we've prepared quarters aboard the Vanguard if you wish to conduct preliminary discussions in a more comfortable setting. The offer was as much strategic as it was diplomatic. Having Kai aboard an Alliance vessel would serve as additional insurance against any sudden change in Solonian policy. To her surprise, the Admiral accepted. I will join you along with two of my senior officers. The opportunity to observe Alliance technology firsthand is educationally valuable. Several hours later, Mara found herself seated across from Admiral Solon Kai in the Vanguard's conference room. The Solonian appeared less imposing in the setting, though his silver-blue skin and glowing eyes still marked him as distinctly alien. Your vessel is smaller than I anticipated, Kai remarked, his gaze sweeping the room. Yet you managed to disable a ship 10 times your size with innovative tactics, rather than brute force. This suggests a strategic philosophy quite different from our own. The Alliance has always valued quality over quantity, Mara explained. We have fewer resources than the Solonian Empire, so we've learned to maximize their effectiveness. An interesting approach, Kai conceded. Though it poses the question of sustainability, you cannot expect to prevail against superior numbers indefinitely, which is precisely why we prefer diplomacy to conflict whenever possible, Mara countered. War is inherently wasteful, regardless of who emerges victorious. Kai's expression shifted subtly, something akin to curiosity crossing his features. The concept of waste is foreign to the collective. All resources, all lives, serve a purpose in the greater design. And what is that design, Admiral? What is the ultimate goal of the Solonian Empire's expansion? The question seemed to catch Kai off guard. For a moment he appeared almost confused, as if the answer had always been so obvious that he'd never considered articulating it. Perfection, he finally stated. The harmonization of all sentient life under optimal parameters. And who determines what those parameters are? The collective, of course. The accumulated wisdom of countless generations, processing information, and making decisions with perfect efficiency. Mara leaned forward slightly. But perfect efficiency toward what end? What happens once you've conquered every system, assimilated every species? What is the purpose beyond expansion itself? Kai fell silent, his glowing eyes dimming slightly as he processed the question. When he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its harmonic quality, sounding more singular than collective. I do not know. That determination lies beyond my individual function. The admission seemed to disturb him, and Mara recognized a crucial moment in their dialogue. The disruption of the collective consciousness had created a rare opportunity. A Solonian leader capable of independent thought, questioning the very foundations of his society's purpose. Perhaps that's something we can explore together, she suggested gently. The Alliance believes that diversity of thought and approach leads to stronger, more resilient civilizations. Different perspectives offer different solutions to common problems. Diversity creates inefficiency. Kai objected, though, with less certainty than before. Diversity creates options, Mara countered. And options create resilience. A single approach, no matter how perfect, can become a critical vulnerability when circumstances change unexpectedly. As we discovered today, Kai acknowledged reluctantly. The conversation continued for hours, touching on philosophy, governance, and the fundamental nature of sentient rights. Throughout, Mara could sense Kai struggling with concepts that challenged 4 centuries of Solonian doctrine. It was a small beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. When they finally concluded their discussion, Kai rose from his seat with a thoughtful expression. You have given me much to consider, Captain Thane. I will return to my vessel now and await the arrival of your diplomatic team. Thank you for your willingness to engage in this dialogue, Admiral, Mara replied sincerely. It represents an historic opportunity for both our peoples. As Kai and his officers departed, Lieutenant Corrin approached Mara with a puzzled expression. Captain, permission to speak freely. Always, Lieutenant. Do you really believe the Solonians will honor this ceasefire once their collective consciousness is restored? Everything we know about them suggests they operate on pure logic and efficiency. The logical choice would be to regroup and attack again with overwhelming force. Mara considered this. You're probably right about their usual approach, but what we witnessed today was something unprecedented. A Solonian commander forced to think independently of the collective. That experience can't be erased, even when their network is restored. At the very least, it introduces a variable they've never encountered before. And that variable is doubt, Corrin realized. Exactly. For the first time in centuries, a Solonian leader is questioning the purpose behind their expansion. That's a crack in the foundation of their entire empire. Whether it widens or is sealed depends largely on what happens next, but it's a start. Over the next several days, as the diplomatic vessel arrived and formal negotiations began, that crack continued to widen. Ambassador Rylus Thane, upon his arrival, quickly recognized the unique opportunity presented by Admiral Kai's temporary independence from the collective and structured the negotiations to emphasize individual autonomy alongside collective welfare. The Solonian Council, once their communication network was fully restored, initially ordered Kai to abort the negotiations and resume the invasion. But something unprecedented occurred. Kai refused. Supported by the officers and crew who had worked alongside the Alliance engineers, He argued that the experience of individual thought had revealed limitations in the collective approach that merited further exploration. The resulting schism within the Solonian Empire was not violent, but philosophical, with factions emerging that advocated for varying degrees of individual autonomy within the collective framework. The negotiations expanded from a simple ceasefire to a comprehensive treaty, addressing cultural exchange, territorial boundaries, and the rights of sentient beings to self-determination. 6 months later, Captain Mara Thane stood on the observation deck of the newly established Interstellar Dialogue Center on Luxuria III, watching as Solonian and Alliance vessels docked side by side at the orbital station above. Beside her, her brother Rylus reviewed the final provisions of what was now being called the Luxuria Accords. "The Council has ratified the treaty," he informed her with satisfaction. "With some unexpected additions. They're establishing an experimental colony where Solonians can experience limited disconnection from the collective to explore individual consciousness." "Kai's influence, I presume?" Rylus nodded. "He's become quite the reformer. Still believes in the benefits of collective intelligence, but argues that periodic individuation strengthens rather than weakens their society. Calls it adaptive diversity. Your term, I believe." Mara smiled slightly. "A concept borrowed from evolutionary biology. Species that adapt to multiple environments are more likely to survive catastrophic changes." "Well, it's caught on. The younger generation of Solonians are particularly interested in the idea. Some have even volunteered for extended exchange programs with Alliance universities." The observation deck door slid open, and Chief Engineer Voris entered, looking somewhat uncomfortable in the formal uniform required for diplomatic functions. "Captain, the reception is about to begin. Admiral Kai has arrived with the Solonian delegation." "Thank you, Chief. We'll be right there." As Voris departed, Mara turned back to her brother. "Did you ever imagine when you got that emergency transmission 6 months ago that we'd end up here?" Rylus shook his head, smiling. "Not in my wildest diplomatic fantasies. 400 years of expansion halted by a single scout ship, with a creative captain and a desperate plan. It's going to make quite the historical footnote." "More than a footnote, I hope," Mara replied thoughtfully. "The real story isn't about stopping the invasion. It's about what happens next. Whether two fundamentally different approaches to sentient existence can find common ground and learn from each other." "Always the philosopher," Rylus teased gently. "Come on, philosopher captain. Let's not keep history waiting." As they made their way to the reception hall, Mara reflected on how completely her perspective had changed since that first confrontation with the Solonian fleet. She had begun as a military commander, prepared to sacrifice her ship and crew to protect Alliance citizens from an implacable enemy. Now, she found herself advocating for understanding and cooperation with that same enemy, recognizing the potential for growth on both sides. The reception hall was filled with representatives from both civilizations. The silver-blue Solonians with their glowing eyes, mingling somewhat awkwardly with humans and other Alliance species. At the center stood Admiral Solon Kai, still imposing, but somehow changed his posture less rigid, his expressions more varied. As Mara approached, Kai inclined his head in the formal Solonian greeting they had established during their negotiations. "Captain Thane, or should I say Director now?" "Captain is still fine, Admiral," Mara assured him. "My new role heading the Dialogue Center doesn't change who I am." "Doesn't it?" Kai questioned, genuine curiosity in his tone. "My experience suggests that new roles inevitably alter one's perspective, sometimes fundamentally." "Perhaps you're right," Mara conceded. "I certainly view the Solonian Empire differently than I did 6 months ago." "As I view the Alliance," Kai acknowledged. "It is surprisingly satisfying to have one's assumptions challenged." The collective had not anticipated this outcome. "The beauty of unexpected variables," Mara smiled. "They force new calculations, new approaches." Kai's eyes brightened slightly, the Solonian equivalent of amusement. "Indeed, The Council continues to process the implications of our encounter. Some factions suggest it validates the need for greater uniformity and predictive capability. Others argue for more adaptive, individualized response mechanisms. And your opinion, Admiral, is increasingly valued, surprisingly enough, Kai replied. My direct experience with autonomous decision-making appears to hold significant weight in the discussions. I find myself advocating for a balanced approach, maintaining the efficiency of collective intelligence while incorporating the creative potential of individual thought. A revolutionary concept for your people. As is the idea of peaceful coexistence with a non-assimilated species for our leadership, Kai countered. Yet, here we stand. The formal ceremonies began with speeches from representatives of both civilizations, emphasizing the historic nature of the accord and the potential for mutual benefit through cooperation rather than conflict. As Mara listened, she noticed her tactical officer Rodriguez standing near one of the viewing windows, his expression troubled. During a break in the proceedings, she made her way to his side. "Something on your mind, Lieutenant?" Rodriguez straightened slightly. "Just thinking about the bigger picture, Captain. The Solonians have conquered 75 systems over 4 centuries. We've negotiated peace for one system, maybe a handful at the border. What about all the other species under their control?" It was a valid concern, one that had occupied much of Mara's thoughts during the negotiations. "Change doesn't happen overnight, Rodriguez. What we've established here is a precedent, proof that alternatives to assimilation exist. That's a concept the Solonian collective has never had to consider before. But is it enough? Will it make a difference for those already under their rule?" Mara looked across the hall where Kai was engaged in conversation with several Alliance scientists, his attention fully focused on their exchange. "I believe it will, though perhaps not as quickly as we might hope. The crack we created in their foundational philosophy is widening. Ideas of individual autonomy and cultural diversity are spreading among their younger generation. That's how lasting change begins, not with dramatic revolutions, but with shifts in perspective that gradually reshape society from within." Rodriguez nodded slowly, though not entirely convinced. "I hope you're right, Captain." "So do I, Lieutenant, so do I." As the reception continued, Mara found herself beside her brother once more, watching the tentative interactions between the two civilizations with a sense of cautious optimism. "You know," Rylus commented quietly, "when I was assigned to the diplomatic corps, I expected to spend my career negotiating trade agreements and resolving minor territorial disputes. I never imagined I'd be helping to reshape the fundamental nature of an interstellar empire." "Life rarely follows our expectations," Mara replied. 6 months ago, I was prepared to sacrifice the Vanguard to slow down a Solonian invasion. Now I'm heading an interspecies dialogue center. Plans change. For the better in this case, Rylus observed. Your actions saved millions of lives, not just on Luxuria 3, but potentially throughout this sector of space. Mara shook her head slightly. "It wasn't just my actions. It was the courage of the Vanguard's crew, the timely arrival of our reinforcements, and most importantly, the willingness of Admiral Kai to consider an alternative to centuries of established doctrine. If any of those elements had been missing, we'd likely be telling a very different story today." "True enough," Rylus conceded. "But it started with your decision to stand against overwhelming odds instead of retreating. Sometimes the impossible becomes possible simply because someone refuses to accept the limitations of conventional wisdom." As the formal ceremonies concluded and the gathering shifted to more casual interactions, Mara found herself approached by Lieutenant Commander Saito, the science officer whose insights had been crucial to their successful strategy against the Dreadnought. "Captain, I've been reviewing the technical data exchanged as part of the Luxuria Accords." Saito began, his expression animated. "The Solonian propulsion system operates on principles we've only theorized about. If we can adapt their approach to our existing technology, we could potentially reduce interstellar travel times by 40%. That would revolutionize Alliance expansion efforts," Mara noted. "Have you discussed this with the Solonian technical advisors?" Yes, and they've been surprisingly forthcoming. In return, they're particularly interested in our adaptive shield modulation techniques. Apparently, the concept of constantly changing defensive parameters never occurred to them. Their approach has always focused on creating a single, perfect shield configuration. Different perspectives leading to mutual advancement, Mara observed with satisfaction. Exactly what we hope to achieve with these exchanges. As the evening progressed, Mara found a quiet moment to step away from the gathering and return to the observation deck. The view of Luxuria 3 below, a vibrant blue-green world, now safe from invasion, provided a tangible reminder of what had been at stake 6 months ago. She was joined unexpectedly by Admiral Kai, who regarded the planet with an unreadable expression. "Your people have made remarkable progress rebuilding the colony," he observed. "Our scans indicate population growth has already exceeded pre-crisis levels." "People are resilient," Mara replied, "especially when they believe in the future they're building." Kai turned to face her directly. "I have been authorized by the Council to share something with you. Information not included in the formal accords." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "The disruption you created in our collective consciousness had wider effects than initially reported." "What kind of effects?" Mara asked, instantly alert. "The electromagnetic pulse propagated through our quantum communication network before emergency protocols could contain it. Momentary disconnection was experienced by Solonians in 17 systems, not just those aboard the vessels in this fleet. The implications were staggering. 17 systems experienced individual consciousness." Kai inclined his head. "Briefly, yes. Most reintegrated without incident once the network stabilized. But in 6 systems, particularly those with younger populations, or those more recently assimilated, questions have emerged. Discussions that would have been discouraged before are now taking place openly." "You're experiencing a cultural revolution," Mara realized. "That term implies a level of disruption the Council would find concerning," Kai cautioned. "We prefer to characterize it as philosophical enhancement through experiential diversity." Despite the gravity of the conversation, Mara couldn't suppress a smile. "A more diplomatic framing, certainly." "The point," Kai continued, "is that your actions have precipitated changes beyond this system. The Council is still determining whether these changes represent an opportunity or a threat to our civilization's future." "And your assessment, Admiral?" Kai was silent for a long moment, his gaze returning to the planet below. "I believe that any system incapable of adaptation is ultimately doomed to failure regardless of its initial success. The universe is too vast, too variable for a single approach to remain optimal indefinitely. The Solonian Empire has conquered 75 systems through unwavering adherence to collective efficiency. Perhaps the next 75 will require a different strategy. Incorporating individual autonomy alongside collective intelligence," Mara suggested. "Perhaps," Kai acknowledged. "The experiment has begun, whether the Council fully approves or not. The outcome will be interesting to observe." As Admiral Kai departed, leaving Mara alone with her thoughts, she reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them to this point. A routine scouting mission transformed into a desperate last stand. A seemingly hopeless battle against overwhelming odds becoming the catalyst for peaceful contact between civilizations. An implacable enemy revealed as capable of change and growth. The future remained uncertain. The Luxuria Accords were just the beginning of what would likely be a complex, sometimes difficult relationship between the Alliance and the Solonian Empire. The philosophical shifts within Solonian society might continue to expand, or they might be contained and ultimately suppressed by the collective. But standing there, watching Alliance and Solonian vessels navigating peacefully in shared space, Mara Thane felt something she had not expected to feel 6 months ago when facing the Solonian fleet. Hope. Not just for the survival of Luxuria 3 or the Alliance, but for the possibility of something greater, a future where different forms of sentient existence could learn from each other, rather than seeking to dominate or destroy. It had begun with a single ship refusing to retreat in the face of impossible odds. Where it would end, no one could predict. But the journey itself was already proving more remarkable than anyone could have imagined. As Captain Marathane returned to the reception ready to continue building bridges between once hostile civilizations, she carried with her a profound understanding that would guide her future endeavors. True strength lay not in conquest alone, but in the courage to stop to listen and to find common ground with those we once considered enemies. In the vast expanse of space with countless worlds and civilizations yet to be discovered, this lesson might prove the most valuable discovery of all.